Hello and welcome. I'm Harry Forbes from ARC Advisory Group. Today, we are going to discuss an important new development in the field of industrial automation. That is, a common software runtime environment for industrial automation systems designed according to IEC 61499 standard. Let me break that down first with a few points. Automation and application software, like any asset, has a life cycle that begins in design, is followed by a build phase, and then operate and a maintain phase. Software runtime environment is where the software resides during the operation. The runtime environment provides access to all kinds of resources for an automation software application, such as sensors, actuators, all types of networks, storage, and compute or CPU resources. In the IT world, software runtime environment has now become distinct from an operating system. And as software in the IT world becomes more modular, or microservices is the IT buzzword for this, then the runtime environment becomes more distinct. One example of this is the environment is Docker, which runs containerized software applications in the IT world. But in the world of industrial automation, we find siloed and proprietary DCS, PLC, and device network systems that interoperate only with some difficulty and only at a higher level than the runtime, so that software applications which are written for one system environment will not run on another. The automation world also operates more with written standards that different vendors implement, where in the IT world, the trend is to use products based on reference implementations. Some examples of that are Linux distributions, Docker, and Kubernetes. To accelerate innovation in the IT, the goal realized now is to spend more time writing working code and less time writing standards. In the future, with automation investing more and more in software intellectual property and very concerned with linking real-time automation systems with IT-oriented applications such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced analytics, the OT world needs to learn more about how the IT world works. Today, we are going to talk about universal automation, which addresses the traditional automation system limitations by offering a common software runtime environment based on IEC 61499. The underlying code that provides this environment will be managed by a vendor-neutral, nonprofit organization with members from both the end user and automation supplier communities. This is a very important and unique development, in my opinion, and I hope we can all learn more about it today in this webinar. With that, I'm going to introduce our panel of experts. And first, I have with me today Franco Cavadini, Chief Technical Officer of GR3N. GR3N is a Swiss company that has invented and is now industrializing the first economically viable and environmentally sustainable process for breaking down PET and polyester plastic material, recycled material, and then reassembling it to obtain virgin-like plastic in an endless recycling loop. Second is Andre Fritsch. Andre is Senior Project Manager for Remote I/O and Field Bus from R. Stahl. Stahl is one of the pioneers of remote I/O technology for hazardous industrial environments. So their company philosophy is bringing products to the market that employ the latest available technology and make it usable in these hazardous environments. Third is John Conway, who is Vice President, Business Transformation for Schneider Electric. Now, John, let me begin with you. I'd like to, current industrial automation system architectures have done a good job of advancing industry to where we are today. But to fully realize the power or the promise of the fourth industrial revolution, we need to change the technology model that we're using. What are the main ingredients that you see needed to realize this kind of plug and produce vision for industrial automation, John?
Harry, fundamentally, you need two things: a technology that supports the notion of software components, and secondly, you need multiple vendors adopting that technology. 1 year ago, Schneider Electric launched a game-changing offer, EcoStruxure Automation Expert, and we positioned that offer as the world's first universal automation offer. And we explained that universal automation is the world of plug and produce automation software components based on the IEC 64099 standard. The simple idea is that instead of custom programming of proprietary systems, automation engineers build applications by plugging together proven in use software components to solve complex use cases in a cost-efficient and vendor-independent manner. The IEC 64099 standard enables this software component approach to automation, and this is why we call it the missing link for Industry 4.0. Because Industry 4.0 requires the creation of more complex use cases, such as interfacing the real-time controls with analytics to do predictive maintenance. And this can only be done effectively using a proven in use software components. Now, of course, if EcoStruxure Automation Expert is the only offer with this technology, then it won't gain widespread support and the plug and produce approach won't gain traction in the industry. So on the 3rd of November, we announced the final piece of the puzzle that we've been working on for over a year now with about 20 other companies. We announced the creation of universalautomation.org, a non-profit independent association that manages, following shared source principles, a reference runtime implementation of the IEC 64099 standard, the same runtime that is at the core of the EcoStruxure Automation Expert offer. Universal automation promotes portability of code, interoperability across different vendors, as well as IT-OT convergence and the plug and produce approach to automation. And this is achieved by the different vendors implementing the same runtime on their hardware platform. Members of the association will manage the runtime moving forward, adding new features to the roadmap. And members will come from not only the vendor side of the business, but also from the user side. We need both vendors launching offers and users demanding the technology from their suppliers. So now we've got all the ingredients in place to realize the plug and produce vision of universal automation. Number one, an exciting technology, an enabler of plug and produce software components for real-time and right-time applications in the form of the IEC 64099 standard. Number two, an independent and neutral association, universalautomation.org, managing a reference implementation of the IEC 64099 runtime, supported by multiple vendors. And of course, offers that users can buy and actually test the technology. EcoStruxure Automation Expert is the first offer on the market, but there'll be more coming early next year, for example, from Stahl.
Okay, thank you, John. Turning to Franco now, you are well known as a champion of IEC 61499. Could you explain to us more about why GR3N decided to choose EcoStruxure Automation Expert that is based on IEC 61499?
Yeah, thank you, Harry. Absolutely. I've been working with 61499 for quite so many years for the moment being. Starting on the side of system integrators and automation developers. Now that I've passed on the other side of the barrier, the one about end users and OEMs, let's say that in my role of CTO, I have immediately pushed, especially since we are yet in industrialization stage, the usage of 61499 as an enabling technology for our company. The question about why I push that is strictly linked to our technology and our business model. We are actually creating this approach to recycling of plastics, which is modular in its intrinsic principle. It's modular because it needs to adapt to the local production of waste by municipalities. So our plants need to be designed in quite a large scope of potential productivity. So as much as we have modularity in our mechatronic systems, we equally need the modularity in software. Honestly, as a chief engineer for our business, I don't want every time I build or renew a machine to start from scratch. I want to reuse as much as possible code. And that's exactly one of the key advantages that the 61499 standard offers. It also gives me another point. Our advantage, our verge on the market is linked to our know-how. That is partly covered by our patents, but obviously part of it is intrinsic in our software. And I want to have a way to protect our software, encapsulating the know-how inside the pieces of code we develop for our machines, but also simplifying the transfer of these of the usage of this know-how to the EPC contractors that will actually integrate our machines into the plants that will be brought to the market. So this is again one point where using the natural object orientation of the 61499 standard is actually going to help us a lot. Another point is the IT/OT connectivity that you and John were talking about. You must understand that in the circular economy domain, certification of what you do is essential. We need to be follow the whole value and supply chain of our material, especially within our plants. This means that our real-time controller are going to be constantly connected to IT software, both in terms of analytics, but then usage of those data to certify what we are doing. And once again, this is where the event-based nature of a 61499 implementation simplifies a lot for us the possibility of linking the actual normal control software with the one coming from the IT. And finally, it's vendor independence. I want to decouple the life cycle of the control hardware that we use for our machine, which will follow the improvement of the hardware in the coming years, from the life cycle of the software. Those two obviously converge into an implementation, but they should follow their own dynamics in a way that doesn't lock you in on a specific hardware the moment you decide to develop a software inside a certain platform. And the natural hardware independence of 61499 is actually perfect for our purposes.
Okay, thank you very much, Franco. And now turning to Andre. Andre, your company, Stahl, is a founding member of this new organization that John mentioned, universalautomation.org. Can you tell us what were the main reasons that Stahl was convinced to join this new organization?
Yeah, sure, Harry. So, Stahl is traditionally a manufacturer of remote I/O, and these products, they interface with all the different PLC and DCS systems on the market. And the interfacing is based on standard communication protocols. So an open remote I/O system, if you like. But we learned over the last approximately 30 years that such communication standards still offer a lot of room for proprietary interpretations. And it makes the life much harder for us as a supplier, but also for our end users. And by embedding the UAO IEC 61499 runtime on our remote I/O, that makes it appear like any other controller in the distributed control system. So that results in a very simple and effective integration of our remote I/O in any universal automation system. It's a plug and play, plug and produce solution. There are no special drivers or customized interfaces required. And as a bonus, the flexible architecture for users allows for implementation of additional functionalities in such I/O islands. But the cherry on the cake is the real-time and right-time capabilities of the IEC 61499 that will allow us to also implement the new IoT functions directly in the I/O device. And this allows Stahl and our ecosystem to provide added value to our customers. So this is like a toolbox for digitalization and hazardous areas. And finally, Stahl does not have the expertise or resources to develop such a complex and highly functional runtime system on our own. The reference implementation approach lowers our financial investment and really lowers our risk because we are now part of a bigger universal automation movement. And with this, we can stay focused on our core competences like explosion protection and connectivity in hazardous areas.
Okay, thank you very much, Andre. And let me ask the same question to Franco. You are not a supplier, Franco. Your firm is really an end user and an OEM with respect to automation. What prompted you to become a founding member of universalautomation.org?
Well, actually, I would say that there are two main reasons. The first one is the idea of an ecosystem itself. We are strong believers that nowadays you cannot always develop everything internally. You need to exploit the presence of know-how in partnerships around you. And obviously, being part of an ecosystem that we hope in a very short amount of time will bring advanced competencies into the 61499 world is for us an opportunity to be caught. The second point is that I want to be able to share my view and to steer the direction of development of the platform. The moment universalautomation.org is going to actually manage the continuous improvement of the runtime itself, I'd like to be able, as other end users, I suppose, to bring in our point of view and to be certain that the next releases will actually be even better for us. Listening and accepting what are probably our suggestions coming from the field.
Okay, thank you very much. And now let me turn the topic a little bit more to actual experience rather than this new organization, as important as it is. And I'll come back to you again, Franco, and ask you to tell our audience a little more about GR3N's recent recycling project, PET recycling project. Would you give us some background on that?
Yeah, of course. It's obviously very nice for me to have this opportunity here. Well, you must consider that GR3N is a young company starting from a few patents of a few years ago, and we are in the process of industrializing our core technology. And what actually that is, it's a chemical approach to depolymerizing PET plastics and polyester plastics. It means that we can take post-consumer and post-industrial waste of polyethylene terephthalate, which in other terms is what you know is being used for bottles or for shampoo bottles, or even for polyester, which means textiles. And then through our plants, we are able to bring back the monomers used to produce that polymers in a virgin equivalent way. It means that the output of our plants is undistinguishable from that coming from oil. In concrete terms and from the social point of view, we are actually bringing to the market a technology to create a real circular economy value chain for PET and polyester. In technological terms, which I think might be of more interest for the audience of today, our patent is based on the usage of microwave as a means to accelerate the chemical reaction that decomposes PET into its monomers. And this is implemented in the machines called reactive units that we are going to bring to the market. These machines will be taken by EPC contractors and implemented into large-scale plants to actually satisfy the needs of typical municipalities like Munich or Milan or Lugano, since we are from Switzerland practically. In the end, what we want to achieve is giving a concrete and industrially sustainable solution to at least part of the plastic problem of today. And obviously, working hand in hand with technology leaders such as Schneider Electric or in general universalautomation.org is for us an additional opportunity to be actually effective and bringing our contribution to saving the world, allow me to say.
Well, that's very interesting, Andre. I look forward to hearing more about that as you progress in the future. Now I'm going to turn to John Conway and ask, John, as a supplier, can you share with us some other examples of use cases for using this new technology of 61499?
Sure, Harry. Perhaps the most well-known use case is ExxonMobil. That uses the Universal Automation Runtime as part of their OPAF testbed. For those of you that don't know OPAF, it's the Open Process Automation Forum. It's developing a standard of standards for a truly open process automation system. Portability of applications across multi-vendor platforms is one of OPAF's goals, and Exxon demonstrates this on their testbed using the Universal Automation Runtime. But with the launch of EcoStruxure Automation Expert last year, we have quite a few interesting use cases in different segments and countries. To name a few, we've got an Indian process OEM specializing in vegetable oil extraction. We've got a large European system integrator who are heavily involved in upgrading legacy systems to add Industry 4.0 functionality. We've got a large Chinese logistics OEM that designs and builds modular cold logistic chains for the food industry. Now, why did these companies choose EcoStruxure Automation Expert? Well, there are multiple factors that came into play, but they were linked to the underlying features of IEC 64099. And Franco actually touched on quite a few of them when he described why GR3N was using the technology. I mean, all of the companies embraced the concept of developing the automation application independently of the hardware platform and getting a high level of vendor independence. Why? I mean, this gives them more flexibility, not only in the choice of vendor, but also in the choice of the architecture itself, you know? So whether a customer wants a centralized design running on a powerful edge computer or a highly distributed design running across multiple controllers, this becomes a simple design choice at the moment of deployment and not a major redesign effort to switch from one architecture to another. The process OEMs, like Franco, they were particularly interested in the use of software components to model physical assets as a way to implement modularity in the design. It's what we call asset-centric design. This matching of modularity of the control system to the mechanical and electrical subsystems. It allows you to create mechatronic components that can be assembled to build a complete line or machine. This object-oriented, asset-centric approach to programming is one of the strong points of IEC 64099. Of course, a lot of the customers, they want to interface the real-time controls with the IT applications. We've got an interesting example of a marine OEM who want to create a digital twin so that their maintenance engineers, they can be trained on a particular platform before being sent offshore to carry out maintenance. And this requires interfacing the real-time controls with the 3D simulation systems. And the event-driven, object-oriented design methodology of IEC 64099 makes this so much easier than with classical control system programming software. I want to mention one last example. It's from a small startup company called Dynamic Process that have implemented a revolutionary controller to replace classical PID controls. The controller, it's called RelaxC. It uses a mathematical technique called relaxation to implement a much more efficient control algorithm that is really much easier to tune than a classical PID loop. Now, Dynamic Process, they chose universal automation because it allows them to encapsulate their IP in a software component independent of the hardware and then deploy that component on the different vendor platforms.
Okay, thank you, John. Let's go back to Andre and maybe get a second look from the supplier standpoint. Andre, you've implemented this runtime in your ATEX remote I/O systems. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how that went and what you had to do?
Yeah, of course. So creating such an IEC 64099 system from scratch would be a too large undertaking for a medium-sized company like Stahl. And our focus and our core competences is on electrical explosion protection and on intelligent communicating systems for connectivity between the real and the digital world, like exactly such remote I/O products do. And what we really liked about the universalautomation.org approach was that it greatly reduced our risk of implementation. So by using the reference implementation of the IEC 64099 runtime, we simply had two main tasks to create a new product offering. So the first one was we need to port the runtime to our I/O platform's operating system. And with a new generation of our IS-1 Plus communication unit that features a very powerful hardware platform. So we use a real-time Linux with an API. And with this was a very straightforward task. And the second was to create the interface to our I/O subsystem, so to map the I/O data to the runtime. And the Universal Automation Runtime has been designed to make this pretty easy. So using a technique, it's called CATS, what is Composite Automation Type. And Schneider Electric just trained us how to do this. And then we were able to complete the task in a pretty short time. Actually, we really expected much more work to implement such a powerful technology and we planned for much more resources overall, but it was a very straightforward task to create our universal automation offer using the reference implementation from UAO with the support from Schneider Electric and the training, of course, to our team behind it. Yeah, and as a result, we already did some prototype implementations at some end user sites. And the next steps will be to finalize the implementation to cover all our I/O modules and also the large functionality that our IS1 Plus offers. So that's, for example, some enhanced diagnostics, predictive maintenance functions, but also integration of hard I/O. And all this can be easily implemented into the UAO runtime. So it's just a matter of our priorities and the available time for it, as usual, of course. So our plan is to launch our universal automation offer early next year. But I have to say we are ready today to supply our product for prototype testing and some proof of concepts. So we are still, of course, in the learning phase with this new and interesting technology. So we want to know from customers, from users, end users, what can or should be done with the technology. So that's what we are now very interested to start the discussion with the potential users.
Well, let me follow that up, Andre, with a question about the role of open technological platforms and communities, as you mentioned, and their role in fostering adoption of universal automation. Could you talk about your experience with Schneider Electric Exchange and why you are members as a supplier of Schneider Electric Exchange?
Of course. So, yeah, as I mentioned, so we are a very specialized, medium-sized company, and good, like anybody, we do have limited resources available, and our offering is interface technology. So, like our remote I/O, that is always a place between the control and the field level. So somehow we are always caught in the middle. And the challenge now is we need to fulfill all the requirements from the DCS side, but also the field side, and of course from the end users. So in addition, we are working for hazardous area installation. So it's not just selling a product, but more designing a solution based on customer wishes, safety requirements, and all this stuff. So maybe to illustrate this, I would like to show you an example of such a system. Also, that's here now a remote I/O application that we have designed to be used on board of LNG carriers. And these are used for compressor control, for example. So here we need already to fulfill a large set of requirements suitable for the use on board on ships. So that's, of course, ship certification, like DNV or BV and how they are all named. Then integration of additional control elements like big push buttons, indicators. So as we can see here on the left-hand side on the door. And also high availability on such a ship by using our remote I/O with a redundant communication interface. And yeah, much more of these things. And plus, of course, on top of all this, there's the full X certification for installation of such systems in a Zone 1 environment. Yeah, and in future, maybe with some additional UAO-based advanced functionalities as well. Let's see. So it is therefore very important for us that we have access to larger ecosystems like the SE Exchange, where we can promote our technology and our expertise in this field. And yeah, where our customers then can get access to additional added values like such ATEX or IACX system solutions. The universalautomation.org creates a technology platform for plug and produce applications. And we now need to access to a business platform, so marketplaces like Exchange, where users and vendors can buy and sell these plug and produce components. And this is not something that Stahl wants to set up on our own. We already advertise our Stahl products on Exchange, so it's natural for us and our users to look to Exchange for these plug and produce components and system solutions as we have seen in this picture before.
Okay, thank you, Andre. Let me ask the same question or similar question to Franco. As GR3N is an end user of automation and also an OEM for equipment, can you tell us, Franco, you've joined the exchange. What do you see as the benefits for your firm of joining the exchange?
Yeah, in order to give you an answer to this question, I need to explain a bit better our model. As I already told you, we start being an OEM. We have our patent, we have our machine, and this will be sold to EPC contractors, which means that we are going in our core activities also to do automation software development and integration into machine that will go on field. But on the other side, we are also the owner of the IP of the process itself, which means that we are deep into the conception and then the commercial phase for full-scale plants that will use our core machines. Now, why am I explaining this? Because this means that as a CTO for the company, I'm looking at exchange for two reasons mainly. As a developer of machine, I want to reduce the software engineering effort of my team. And to do that, I want to exploit reusable pieces of codes that have been maybe tested, certified, are available within an ecosystem which is of industrial grade. I want to be able to go and take components. Hello? Okay, so I'm back. So the second part of the story, as I was saying, is that from the plant point of view, so from the moment we use our technology for end users that will be customers for our plants, we already know that analytics, that storage and certification of data, that continuous improvement by supervisory optimization of our plants is going to be an essential step to reach our full potential. Why is that? Well, because we are working with waste. There is a natural and intrinsic variability in our feedstock that means that traditional control is not going to be enough to take out all the maximum from our plants, which means that I want to be able to go and exploit the know-how of a new generation of automation software developers, those working at layer 2 and layer 3 of the automation pyramid, but automatically integrated into our automation architecture, which means, once again, exploiting this natural OT-IT connectivity that 64099 offers. And again, that's not my business to become an AI or a data analytics expert. I want to be able and to go to a certified ecosystem and look for people, mostly from software development side, that can bring new solutions and continuously improve on what is there for our plants.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let me turn to John Conway. We've talked about a number of things here, the 61499, this new organization, universalautomation.org, and we've talked about Schneider Electric Exchange and Schneider Electric products. Could you kind of wrap up or summarize the key takeaways as you see it from these developments?
Sure. So yeah, if I sum up, as I explained earlier, I mean, first of all, we put in place a technology based on IEC 64099, which is a technical enabler of object-oriented design using software components, okay? We've created now universalautomation.org, a neutral, independent association to drive adoption of a reference implementation of an IEC 64099 runtime. And by doing this, we're going to speed up adoption and maximize the portability and interoperability of software components across the different vendor platforms. But to come back to this, what Franco was saying, both of these, they're just technology enablers, okay? The real value is not in these enablers. The real value is in the applications that will run on top of this technology enabler, okay? And these applications, they're built by specialists in the ecosystem, okay? The idea is these specialists, they're going to encapsulate their technical and domain expertise inside software components. And then companies like GR3N will be able to use those components to do a specific task, okay? Now, for this to work, we need to set up tools where developers can create the apps and then sell those apps to the broader market. And this is where platforms like Exchange come in, with a developer's portal to develop these value-adding applications and a marketplace to sell them. Now, Schneider Electric, we've already made available libraries of components developed using the EcoStruxure Automation Expert build time. But we're very much right at the start of this journey, putting in place the enablers. The real prize will be seeing the ecosystem developing the added value on top of the enablers. One last comment about Exchange, Harry. It's also an open community where people can ask questions and get answers from experts in the community. And as an example, we'll flash up a link on the screen where you can see a typical discussion about some online videos that will give you more background on how to program using this new technology.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And now I'm going to turn the event more to questions and answers, and we're inviting questions from our audience, so please feel free to enter your questions. And we have several questions already from the audience, so I'm going to begin with their questions. And the first one, I think, is for John, and the question is important. Could you explain how the intellectual property is being managed in universalautomation.org? Can you give an overview of that and what intellectual property there is and how it's being managed?
Okay, that's, do I have a couple of hours, Harry?
No, you don't. You only have a couple of minutes at most, so please, you have to condense it quite a bit.
But we spent 8 months working with the founding members of about 20 companies on putting in place an IP policy. Okay, and the IP policy, what is the purpose? Is to ensure that all the IP that is inside the runtime is available to all the members, and they have a freedom to operate and use that IP. Okay, so so that policy, I mean, in simple terms, how does it work? Essentially, it's got this thing called an essential claims policy, where essentially members will grant a license to essential claims. Essentially, they're saying, if the runtime is using any of my IP, that's okay. Members can use it. Okay, that's the simple answer. Okay.
Okay. And another question I will maybe address to Andre as a member of the universalautomation.org organization. Who's eligible to join this organization? Andre, can you give us an overview of that?
So the short answer is everybody. Yeah. And the longer answer is, of course, every organization. It could be like us, a supplier of hardware, but it could be also an organization like a university or a test lab, DCS suppliers. So all that want to work together in this community are always very welcome to participate in this team. There are different levels of membership, of course. So that's like in all other of these standard development organizations. So you have to pay a certain amount of membership fee, and related to this, you get different rights and different possibilities to influence the technology if you're interested in. But you can also work as a technical partner to do some, for example, training courses for customers and all these stuff. So there's a lot of possibilities. And yeah, that will be much more require much more time to explain it in details. So the best is just to contact us in the team, and then we can give you the details, what different levels are available, and how you could participate in this organization.
Yeah, Harry, maybe before you ask your next question, let me just add to what Andre just said as well.
Sure.
We also need users. You might get the impression this is for people taking the runtime and implementing it, so it's for vendors. Okay. The reality is we need users that are going to use this technology, and they're going to tell their suppliers to use the technology. So we need both. We need vendors like Stahl, bringing an offer to the market because users want to see where are the offers for this technology. And then we need companies like GRTN telling their suppliers, the future for me is this technology. Please, take a look at this technology and please consider using it. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough. The next question is related to that. It is, I think I'm going to ask Franco this question as an end user and a developer. The question is the position of IEC 61499, which is relatively new in practice and industrial practice, to the more traditional IEC 61131. How do you see them? Do you have experience with both, and are they complementary or competing? And what's your experience in those areas?
Yeah, of course, I have experience in both. I would say, as most of those working with 61499. And I also must say that this is one of the questions I like the most. It might be seen as a critical or polemical one, but it's actually a very good question to position 61499 technology. Again, following on Andre's steps, I will start with a short question. The two technologies are complementary, not competing. Now, how do we elaborate on that? You must understand that 61499 is not just a programming language. 61499 is an engineering model-based approach, first of all, and it is an execution model, which means that it is complementary and contains 61131. So just to give you an idea, the standard itself defines how control algorithms should be written inside the 61499 application. It doesn't impose a specific language, so it could be whatever, but it suggests that in industrial application scenarios, it should be one of the 61131 languages, and in particular, the structured text one, which is the most advanced of the languages of 61131 to program control logics. So the two standards and the corresponding implementation at technological levels should be seen as complementary. Obviously, this doesn't mean that we can simply copy and paste existing 61131 application and use them into a 61499 environment. But before a technical problem of interpreting the code, this would not work, or maybe it would work but not optimally, because you need to change your engineering approach. It's like if you say, can you copy and paste C ANSI code into a C++ type of environment? Most of the time, the answer will be yes. But would you do that? No, because you wouldn't exploit the potentiality of a new engineering approach. So this complementarity must be exploited. And in order to do that, you must change the way you conceive and then implement industrial control applications.
Okay, thank you very much. Andre has a question for you here. You mentioned that you've integrated the universalautomation.org runtime into your remote I/O for hazardous. Does that mean you're really a full-scale DCS supplier now at Stahl, or how do you see that?
Good point. Yeah, no, definitely not. So it's never our intention to become a DCS company. So there's much more behind the DCS than just a powerful runtime. You have to add a lot of more things like the services and consultancy for customers, integration workers, and so on. So our intention is to offer an efficient hard and software platform for the use in the hazardous locations. There are not so many choices available, and that should allow our customers, so the functionality what is included allows our customers to develop new digitalization concepts. So we get a lot of requests from customers. They have interesting, wonderful ideas, but a DCS or even a PLC is too much. They say it's too costly, and there's few functionalities. That would be something we would like to implement into some decentralized I/O system. And so they basically want to take some load from their DCS and PLC and want to use local data processing or implementing new solutions into such a product. So that could be, for example, some local condition monitoring or some local limit value detection, alarming, and such things. So that is more our direction. A platform, but not a DCS. So not at least as long as I will work with Stahl for the next years.
Okay, another question from the audience here. This one is for John, and maybe you can expand on this a little bit, John. The question from the audience is, why should universities join universalautomation.org? It's an excellent question.
Yeah, I mean, let me try and answer that in simple terms. I mean, one of the challenges we have as an industry moving forward is attracting young engineers into the business. And one of the issues we have attracting young engineers is the software technologies we use. They haven't changed so much since the 70s and 80s. I was programming PLCs, if you can believe that, back in the late 70s, early 80s, and the techniques we use today for real-time control, they're pretty much the same techniques from fundamental principles. I mean, the interfaces are nicer. It's easier to connect things together, but fundamentally, it's the same principles. And it's hard to attract the young software engineers into this business. So one of the we believe one of the good positive points about IEC 61499 is a technology that automation engineers can understand it. They look at it, they see graphical based function blocks. It's something they can relate to. But then a software engineer looks at it, he sees the function block, he sees that as a software component, a black box. Okay. So he can relate to it. So it's a technology that's kind of in between these two worlds, and we think it's going to be it will help us attract more software people into our industry. Now, of course, we have to train those young engineers on this technology. So we want universities involved, setting up curriculums, training their students on the technology. Okay, so that's the fundamental reason, and then we can imagine also some additional research work could be done in the future around event-driven technologies as well.
Okay. Franco, a related question. From your perspective, what do you expect will come in the longer term from your adoption of 61499 within GR3N?
Well, obviously, the answer strictly descends from what I told you before. If I look into the future, and I hope there will be a larger scope of acceptance of the technology, I want to actually exploit the investment we are doing today into this technology, which is the initial phases. So, in concrete terms, I'm expecting a quantitative decrease of engineering effort inside our walls, something that can be, let's say, leveraged, especially the moment we will be in a business on a series production, where the reuse of code and, let's say, the more structured approach to designing application will be actually perceivable in the everyday activity. And the second point that I hope for is that by exploiting this natural connection with the IT world, with the analytics world, I see our plants thriving by usage of advanced techniques, which honestly we cannot yet see today, especially in the process industry, but in general in the industry. So I really like to imagine that our plants will not be just at the forefront of the process technology, but it will be also a representation of what Industry 4.0 in practice can be in the implementation of a sustainable chemical process. So this is, let's say, my 2 cents bet on the future of our usage of 61499.
Okay, thank you very much, Franco. And John, here's another question for you, and I think you should answer this pretty thoroughly if you can. The question is, who are the members of this new organization? Can you tell us about the members and why they joined and how they expected to benefit? You've undoubtedly discussed the organization with all the members.
Yeah, we've got quite a diverse group of members. We have classical automation companies like Stahl, like Phoenix Contact, like Advantech. We have IT companies like Intel, like Asus, and then we have users. Obviously, we have users from the oil and gas industry who have been very interested because of this technology really supports what they're doing with OPAF. But we've also been speaking to users in the food and beverage industry, companies like Cargill. To be clear, the last year we spent having one-on-one discussions with about 20, 25 companies. Pretty much all those companies are going to join the organization. They're in the process of joining. When we actually filed the incorporation deed, we had nine founding members. Go onto the universalautomation.org website. You'll see the list. Okay, I don't have them all in my head, but it's a mixture of users, IT vendors, OT vendors, and we even have some OEM machine builders, and we have a large EPC Wood Group. So it's really and of course we have 3 universities. So it's a mixture of the whole ecosystem, if you like. Anyone can join. There is no including Schneider Electric's competitors. Okay, this is truly an effort to build a industry-wide reference implementation, regardless of the vendors. Okay.
Okay. It sounds like a very broad cross section of the ecosystem, as you say, and I think it's encouraging to see suppliers, end users, OEMs, and also universities involved, and I think that's a positive sign. I'm going to turn now. Oh, let me just remind the audience: you can submit your questions, and we will answer them, as many as possible, online here. I mean, now send another question Andre's way. You were talking about your remote I/O system, Andre, as a toolbox for digitalization in hazardous areas. Is that only based on the universalautomation.org runtime and 61499?
That's a good question. Yeah, thanks for that. No, it's not only. So I have to say the UAO runtime is maybe the most powerful tool in our box. But it depends always on the requirements and on the applications. And we also offer less sophisticated tools for more simple tasks. So for example, we do have an OPC-UA interface to connect the diagnostic data to PC databases or cloud systems. That is also used in combination with this approach from the Namur. You may have heard about the Namur open architecture or the NOAA concept. So here they talk about the additional M&O functions, so monitoring and optimization. And also they also use this as a second channel to access diagnostics and more. So here OPC-UA, for example, is a very nice solution. But also for MTP, MTP use is also a possible option to use our remote I/O with for applications in the modular automation. Also here it depends, of course, on the functionality and the size of the whole module. But for some simple tasks, the standard MTP implementations could be used as well. So all in all, I would say, we offer a pretty scalable and pretty powerful toolbox for all the different requirements.
Okay, thank you, Andre. Another question for Franco. Since you are working in your current demonstration project with the 61499 and the Schneider Automation Expert, EcoStruxure Automation Expert, can you give some feedback, or what feedback are you giving to this new organization about 61499 and universal automation? Can you summarize some of the feedback as an end user of this technology that you're giving the organization?
Yeah, indeed. And to be fair, I will provide both the positive feedback and the negative feedback in order to see that everything was not concerted here. So the positive feedback is about the change of perspective in engineering control, as I was saying before. Even starting with a pre-existing know-how of usage of traditional 61131 platforms, starting from scratch on a new project with the 61499 approach already proves valuable advantages, especially the moment the concept of object orientation is used in designing the application. So in the same way as a plant is built of progressively more and more complex system, from pumps, valves, and pipings, going up to subsystems and then groups and then even islands or packages of a plant, it's nice to be able to use the same approach in designing control software. Which is very and immediately perceivable the moment you need to do a modification. Because let's suppose that you want to change the way a motor, the typical of a motor is managed inside your application. Well, you change the class source and immediately you have propagated it along the whole project without changing the overarching application. Because the moment you work by encapsulation, the software has been structured assuming that the motor works. It doesn't care about how it is implemented internally. So if you change the internal implementation, you don't need to change the rest of the application. So propagating improvements or modifications into single blocks is quick and done in a very easy way. Now, the negative feedback, but it's more an intrinsic drawback of the phase we are in, is that we started working, especially with EcoStruxure Automation Expert, very early in the first few days of the release of the platform. Which means what? It means that the availability of reusable libraries, which is really going to become a strong point, is not yet there. At least it's there only partially. So most of the time, we still need to re-implement or implement from scratch even low-level functionalities. Now, obviously, the hope, but also the push towards the first efforts that universalautomation.org will try to sustain is to have this availability of standardized libraries to be sustained and to be made available as soon as possible. Because this is going really to change the speed at which you develop a new application.
Okay, thank you very much. And we've pretty much come to the end of our time for this event. I'd like to thank all the speakers and panelists for joining us today. And thank you to the audience for your questions and your attention and participation in this event. To everyone, please stay safe, be well. And I would point out that for more information on this topic, you can go to the Exchange, and you can also go to the website for this new organization, universalautomation.org. And both will offer you the ability to connect with experts and peers and other users and potential new customers. Now, as we close the event, please stick around for a couple of minutes to watch a short 2-minute demonstration of the Schneider Electric Exchange. So thank you all very much for attending. It's been our pleasure. Goodbye and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is Schneider Electric Exchange, a bold, open business platform where experts and innovators solve everyday energy management and automation challenges every day. A place where efficiency and sustainability meet practicality and profitability. Here you can gain access to tools and resources to answer your own business challenges or solve someone else's. Speed up time to market with a little help from the experts. Reach new partners, customers, and markets around the globe. Let's get technical for a sec. With Exchange, you can dig deep into a library of software solutions and design documentation to enrich projects, or play with developer resources like Schneider and third-party APIs, SDKs, and datasets. You can also tap the community for help, seek out service providers, developers, engineers and integrators, operations managers, and technologists, or harness the power of the crowd to answer challenges. Ask or advise through the forums, and find the right people to help scale your business. Then there's the marketplace. Breakthrough solutions need a home, a place to be found and sold. This is it. Open, accessible, and easy to browse. The marketplace is where bold ideas thrive. That's Schneider Electric Exchange. What are you waiting for?